our candidates, starting with Mr. Nichols.
Great, thank you, Paul. Again, I'm Steve Nichols. I am a candidate for governor here for the local area. I live in Frisco. I want to thank the other three candidates having traveled here from the Austin and Houston areas this evening, and certainly appreciate them participating in this tonight. And certainly thank you, the Dallas Libertarian Party, for putting on this event, and also the University Libertarians and SMU, obviously, for the auditorium this evening. We're in an interesting situation in this election, is that we're hearing disgruntled voters throughout the state. The question is then, what's the answer to that problem? I had somebody come up to me a couple of weeks ago, and I think I gave them an analogy that probably set pretty well. I said, imagine yourself as a homeowner. Your house needs to be painted. If you don't go out and paint your house, eventually the framework's going to deteriorate. And that's the way I look at it. Participating in this election is keeping the framework in place and making sure that we keep our liberties and freedoms alive in the state. Basically, we are looking at a massive budget shortfall in the next biennium. Those of you who don't know, our legislature meets every 2 years for about 180 days. One of the interesting things that are going to be happening in this next biennium, again, is the shortfall. But another thing you might not be aware of is that the next governor will not be taking office until that legislature is in place. So they're going to be already meeting for about a week before you actually take office. You have 180 days at the beginning of that legislature to get anything done. One of the things I bring to the table versus other candidates in the race, both Democrat, Republican, and Libertarian, is I've actually held office. That's a very important element, is that you cannot go into this election not understanding how to participate in the legislative process. Also, I'm a business owner. I have executive experience. The advantage to this is what we see currently in our current president, having not ever really held a professional position and very little legislative experience. He has an agenda, whether you agree with it or not. He's not able to get it to go forward, which is possibly a good thing. But again, the idea being is that he doesn't understand how to operate within the legislature to get anything done. We cannot afford to have 2 years pass us by again with the same things happening in this state. We have to move forward. It's going to take somebody with experience to know how to do that, and I think I bring that to the table. A little bit about myself. I'm married. I have 2 children. I have a daughter that's currently attending Baylor. I also have a son here in the audience. My wife's in the audience. My son is a senior in high school, and he's wanting to play football. And if you guys have any contacts here at SMU with Mr. Jones, it's certainly advantageous to meet this afternoon. But other than that, though, we are looking forward, to some of the same things you are in this election cycle. Is that our family is going through the same things as you are. I'm in the real estate appraisal business. The government has actually probably over-legislated anything that we do in our business than you could possibly believe. We're probably the most regulated business in the country today. Those are the things that my family is looking at from a business perspective. I'm going through the same things you are with children in school. Most of you are finding people on the streets today that are either underemployed, they're uncertain about the future, or possibly unemployed. So we have an economic crisis on our hands. That's one of the issues I have with our current governor, is that we keep on going out there telling us how great this state is. Well, the state's great if you're not affected by this economic climate. If it is, it's the worst economy that you could possibly have. 75% of our budget is spent on education and welfare programs, health and human services. Our state budget next biennium is looking at about a $15 billion shortfall. We need to start looking at the infrastructure of this state so we can grow the jobs again. We only spend about 9% of our budget on roads. We're currently in the process of adding toll roads, which is actually a multiple tax to, it's a punitive tax actually on each and every one of you drive on these roads. You already pay a gas tax. You pay the gas tax whether you're driving on toll roads or free roads. What happens is that whenever you accept toll roads in your environment, in your neighborhood, in your city, is that basically this Texas Department of Transportation says we no longer have to spend public funds on your roads. We're going to go and take that money and give it to somebody else in the state. So every time that you step up and pay taxes on tolls, for tolls, some money is going somewhere else in the state to provide a free road. That's unfair to those who have to drive on. It's very punitive to the local economy. By example, my family spends about $2,400 a year on tolls. That's money that we're no longer going down to the local restaurant, going to the mall and spending, maybe taking vacation, somehow promoting the local economy. But again, I'm Steve Nichols. I'm a libertarian. I have experience. And I'm looking forward to the questions you might have later on in the event. Thank you. We've had issues that stuck around the state for decades. And a good example is back in the 1970s, I was riding in the car with my father out in the Odessa area, listening to talk radio, believe it or not, probably about age 10 or so. The conversation on the radio was illegal aliens in schools. Things haven't changed much, have they? But we have issues like that that are all over the board, that things just haven't changed in decades in the state. What we need to do is we need to start making real change, real progress. People are ready to move forward, and it's time that happens this election. Basically, the problem is pretty simple. We have a struggling economy out there. The state's going to be hit with major budget shortfalls. People in their households have major shortfalls in their budget. But the answers are pretty complex. We've heard Deborah Medina, which I give credit to this, bring up the idea that we should eliminate property taxes, and she's correct that without free ownership of property, you really don't have freedom. Property ownership has nothing to do with property. It has to do with human rights. Without ownership of property, there really is no freedom, period. So remember that. Property ownership has nothing to do with property. It has to do with your rights. But the problem is a little more complex than what she proposes, is to put in a consumption tax. And let me give you an example of how you have to be thinking strategically 5 and 10 years ahead of time. Is that one thing, the consumption tax can fluctuate pretty dramatically with the economy. So you're going to have up and down budget shortfalls through the years as the economy grows and contracts. But one of the problems is we're surrounded by 5%ers, is what I call them. New Mexico, Oklahoma, Louisiana have about a 5% sales tax. So guess where all the retail's going to go? It's going to jump across the border into the other states. People are going to drive 50 miles to go buy a $1,000 TV and save $100. The consumption tax has a neat idea if you apply it across the board. That means the whole country. But when you start applying it in bits and pieces, it's kind of like a city that wants to stay dry, but every city around it's wet. You can drive 3 miles and buy beer. What's the point of being dry? You're just losing income for your city. You're not stopping anybody from buying beer. These ideas are very complex. The solutions are going to be very complex. It's not a one answer fits all. We need to be looking strategically 5, 10, 20 years down the line to understand things like our roads. We need to understand that we have a welfare problem in this state. We need to understand how the federal government's getting involved in jeopardizing our sovereignty. We need to understand that we have a border that's out of control. These are all things that we need to address. We need to start addressing them today. But you know what? We're only going to get 1, 2, or 3 things probably through a legislative session at a time. So you need to pick and choose what they are. And I'm going to leave you with an idea here real quick. It came from Ronald Reagan, 1989. It's farewell address. Very short and simple. Man is not free unless government is limited. There's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts. Thank you.